Chapter 5. Dawn Tradition. Living in Estolia brought Key enormous satisfaction. Not only was his opinion valued, but his skill with shaping rock was uncanny. He was given the freedom to exercise his talent in whatever way he wished. He was a solemn, serious-seeming man, but sometimes he would demonstrate the light heart that dwelt within him. He spent one afternoon on an outcrop of rock at the base of Mount Estoliana. When he finished, it was impossible to see what he had done from up close. But from a distance, the whimsy was obvious. The arm of Mount Estoliana, curved round the lesser peak, now had a well-proportioned lion's paw at its end. Kytheros, Capitulo 42. A week before his birthday the cast came off. His leg was healing remarkably fast. After his first few tentative steps, he was relieved at how easy it was to walk. While atypical, one can break their ankle with minimal soft tissue damage. It appears this is what happened in your case. Looking refined, the doctor wore his crown, elegant cape, and accoutrements of his station that set him apart as king. Why did you take your crown and cape off when I first met you? Having just suffered a broken bone, I thought you might have misgivings if I looked like a king and not a doctor. It was better to appear casual and underdressed than overdressed. Perhaps you have a point. A tap on the door preceded it opening, in the typical Estolian fashion. Anastasia burst into the room, like a tornado. She came to a halt when she saw her uncle looking at his leg, and the remnants of the cast laying like confetti around them. I had hoped to be here before you took the cast off. She sounded disappointed. Anastasia, you do understand that Eduardo has the right to privacy? Of course, she said in that blithe way she had of ignoring facts she didn't like. How is it? She asked. They both turned to look up at Eduardo. It's only a little tender, a little weak. Excellent, she said with relish. Can you ride? Eduardo remembered the interminable lessons he had as a teenager, his aunt insisting that he had to learn to ride, as if it was one of the most critical skills of the 20th century. Reluctantly he admitted, I know the basics. But I don't know that I'd do very well if I had a spirited mount. The door opened again. It was Xavier. Father. She launched herself across the room to give her father a heartfelt hug. One of the things that had often occupied his imagination was the way she approached everything with so much passion and life. He could not help but think of how it would be if he had her in his bed, willing, centering all that glorious tempestuous nature on him. 2 days before his birthday, during dessert, she said, I have asked the stable master if there is a horse you could ride who would not be as spirited as Sirocco. Where are you planning to ride? Xavier asked, glancing from Eduardo to his daughter. She beamed a broad smile at her father before answering. I think that Eduardo should see the dawn from Mount Estoliana. The stable master has the perfect mount for him. The heavy frown on Xavier's face reminded Eduardo of his promise to never be alone with Anastasia. I hope I shall be allowed to go with you, Jamal's smooth voice interjected. I have just finished writing some music for my piccolo to go with a poem called The Dawn. I do not know which ancestor wrote the poem, but it is very beautiful. Eduardo watched the strain on Xavier's face drain away, slightly. Something that was disturbing him. Rather than an objection or an attempt to discourage Anastasia, he merely said, I have heard that the forecast for tomorrow is supposed to be quite pleasant. Eduardo did not consider himself a morning person before his visit to Estolia. But the keeper and his family all woke early and full of energy. In the 7 weeks he'd been living with them, he'd come to appreciate the beauty of the morning. That did not, however, prepare him for the need to wake up more than an hour before dawn. He had trouble stifling the multiple yawns that punctuated the ride to the top of the mountain. After his third loud yawn, he could hear Anastasia laughing. Sorry, he mumbled. I'm just not used to getting up this early. They continued to chat during the ride. The sound of her quicksilver voice thrumming through the pre-dawn air set up an answering vibration through his system, as if he was a violin, and she was the musician calling forth beauty from within him. By the time they reached the peak, he could not recall any of the topics they discussed during the ride. Just being with Anastasia had that effect on him. When she reined to a halt, he looked around curiously. They had reached an area on the top of the lesser peak that was a flat irregular crescent wrapping around the jutting rocks of the summit. The trail, considerably narrower, continued. He couldn't make out many of the details in the featureless pre-dawn. "I would like to ride to the very top to watch the sunrise and play my piccolo," Jamal said. With a carefree wave towards them, he urged his mount to tackle the narrower passage.